Before continuing on and reviewing this presentation, please just take a few moments and go to Module 3 and find the panic quotient in the section called Harnessing Your Nervous Energy. Please just take a few moments to complete that first and come back. Well, from your panic quotient results, how do you rate? Are you a confident speaker? Or are you nervous? Or are you panicked? It is natural to be anxious about communicating to a large group. Being the centre of attention and speaking before a large group of people is not a normal situation for most of us. And did you know that even for seasoned speakers and performers, to feel nervous is normal? Consider, for example, Sir Laurence Olivier. Did you know that he actually would throw up at the prospect of having to speak in front of a live audience? And I bet you don't know that Barbra Streisand refuses to do live performances altogether. You see, even people like that experience stage fright, or you might call it communication anxiety, and they experience it every time they perform. Now, in many situations, the time when we do have to get up and speak in front of a large group of people is usually a pretty important time, a pretty important occasion. For example, having to give a presentation at university, or maybe giving a speech at a wedding or a funeral. And the fact that it is an important occasion just adds to the feeling of dread and anxiety. But even apart from that, many of us are not exactly in our comfort zone speaking in front of a large group of people. I'd like to stop now and have a little think about what constitutes nervousness when you're speaking. Some of my past students have said to me, well, people who are nervous, they shake or tremble, or their minds go blank. I'll bet we've all experienced that. For some people, it's about doing or saying something that afterwards they think, oh, that was so embarrassing. Or they might just be unable to continue and say another word. Or perhaps they can keep saying things, but the words they're saying just don't seem to make sense anymore. And some people just feel that they sound foolish when they get that nervous. Now, all of these people, ourselves included, we really have convinced ourselves that the following myths are true. Firstly, they believe that some people are just natural-born speakers and others are not. And leading on from that, they believe that nerves are uncontrollable. You just are nervous and there's nothing you can do about it. A third myth they might believe is that they will forget their speech, and they also believe they'll make a fool of themselves. Now, the good news is this: 65% of what we fear can be overcome by planning and by preparation. And 15% can actually be overcome by the way that we breathe. And 10% can be overcome by positive self-talk and visualization. Now, we're going to now look at all of these myths and see how we can overcome our fear of speaking in public. Myth number 1. Some people are natural-born speakers. Well, speaking is a skill, and a skill can be learned like any other skill, whether it's cooking or drawing or reading or driving a car. All of these things can be learned. And the thing is that with a skill, the more you practice, the better you become. The spoken word is the only tool that becomes sharper the more you use it. No matter how well you speak, you can become better. Like piano lessons. The best concert pianists in the world still practice for hours and hours every day. So even if you are one of those people who thinks you already are a pretty good public speaker, there's always room for improvement. History is full of people who, in spite of severe handicaps, have become outstanding speakers. One great example of that is Winston Churchill. Churchill was an unimposing little man, and he actually stuttered and lisped. He used to write and memorize his speeches, learn them all off by heart, until one day he was giving his speech in front of the House of Commons, and he had a complete mental blank and broke down in front of everybody. This was his first speech in front of the House of Commons. He stood there and he repeated what he'd just said, and he still didn't know what went next. And he repeated it again. Look, he was completely stuck. He felt humiliated, and his audience felt embarrassed for him. Since that day, Winston Churchill has never memorised a speech ever again. He memorised the message, not the words. He remembered what it was he wanted to say, and then came up with the words in a conversational way as he went. And this is what he practiced, and he practiced it with increased self-confidence, and then eventually, as we all know, he was able to turn his words into weapons of war. Why did speakers like Winston Churchill become great? Well, for one thing, they practiced. When you practice, you can overcome your fear. Let me tell you a story about one of my sons, Nick. Even as a baby, Nick had a fear of heights. You know how you can hold a baby up in the air and it'll giggle and love to be up there, and you can even sometimes throw it up and catch it a little bit? Not our Nicholas. As a little infant, he would cringe and cry if you held him up that way. He was born with a fear of heights somehow. But our Nick also was born with a certain determination. And even as a young child, he was always climbing up in heights. There was the day when his grandparents were minding him and found him up on top of the neighbour's roof. Another time I took him to the park, and there he was up in the tallest part of one of the trees. And I was the one who was afraid. And Nick wasn't comfortable up there, but what he was doing was overcoming his fear of heights by going to the heights. Eventually, as an adult, he totally clinched that overcoming the fear of heights, the time when, not once, but twice, he went skydiving. Our Nick's no longer afraid of heights, and there are many other things that he has been afraid of that he's simply overcome by doing and by practicing. Now, the reason I tell you this story is because you can do this too. If you're afraid of public speaking, you can you can learn to harness those nerves and turn it into something positive by practicing. I'd like to look now with you at the second of our myths. Myth number 2. Nerves are uncontrollable. Now what we were saying before leads into this myth and dispelling it. You want to harness that nervous energy, and you want to make it work for you. Don't expect to be able to get rid of nerves. You use it to make your speech more dynamic and sparkle. You plan what you're going to do with that energy. And then when you feel the nerves come, use it and do something with it. Because on the other hand, if you aren't nervous, if you were able to overcome all those nerves and you weren't nervous at all, then it might suggest that you don't really care very much about either your message or in fact the audience. Edward R. Morrow. Now who is he? He is a radio and television commentator. He said this: "The best speakers know enough to be scared. The only difference between the pros and the novices is that the pros have trained their butterflies to fly in formation." There are 3 levels of fear and nervousness. There's mental, physical, and emotional fear. Now, how are we going to handle these things? Let's talk about mentally first. 97% of our fears are actually subconscious. If you visualize everything working out okay, just right, in great detail, then you will perform with a sense of déjà vu. In other words, you will see yourself doing what you want to do in your mind, and then when you get to perform, it's actually as if you've done it positively before. You've experienced success. Visualization plus skill plus practice equals success. Think about a game of golf. The best golfers are the ones who've stood there and have practiced hitting that golf ball into exactly the right place they wanted to go. Now they have to first visualize where they expect that ball to go. They have to imagine it first. And then they practice. They practice and they practice. Now, before they practice, they might have learnt a few things about skills, but then they put those learned skills to use in their practice whilst all the time visualizing that ball going into the right place. Athletes everywhere use creative visualization. Musicians use it. There's a little book called The Inner Game of Music. Originally it was called The Inner Game of Tennis, and several books with the same sort of title have been written for all different types of skills. And in that book, the premise is that each of us actually have 2 little voices sitting on our shoulders, if you like. There's the one voice that says, "Oh, here comes the hard part, here comes the part where you're going to make mistakes." There's the other voice that we need to listen to, the one that says, yes, this is the hard part, but you've practiced it, you've gotten it right so many times before, you can do this again. Here comes the hard part, yoo-hoo! That is about turning a nervous energy into something positive and helpful. We can all visualize. Let's just try this out. Close your eyes and visualize a traffic signal. Can you see it? Yeah. Visualize roses. Can you see roses? What colour are they? Do they have a nice scent? You see, everybody can visualize. What we need to do is creatively determine what it is we want to visualize, and in our minds run ourselves through that picture of giving a speech that really works. Creative visualization is a very powerful tool. Do you know that Jim Carrey used this approach? In his earlier career, before he really made it as the Jim Carrey we all know, he wrote himself a cheque for $10 million, and he used to keep this cheque in his pocket, and he took it with him everywhere he went. He was visualizing what was going to happen to him if he kept on persevering and practicing. And guess what he was paid for in his first blockbuster movie? Yep, $10 million. Affirmation is part of this process. The success cycle is what you get when you visualize. You can change your negative self-talk to positive self-talk. You see, if you experience success in your mind, then when it comes to actually doing it, you really do have that success because you're expecting to be successful. And when you are successful, you enjoy yourself. You're having a good time. Now, something that you're enjoying, you want to do again. So in other words, you end up practicing that experience. And of course, practicing the experience takes you right back to where you began, because now you are visualizing that success once again. And you keep going through that successful cycle of success which you have started with creatively visualizing it. It's a way of positive affirmation for yourself. Change your negative self-talk to positive. I'm not nervous. I'm energized. I can do this. I'm the expert here. And just remember, the inner game of music, the inner game of tennis, can also be the inner game of public speaking. Visualization and affirmation are two parts of the mental level of overcoming fear and nervousness. And the last bit that you can do is meditation. In meditation, you need to clear your mind of distractions. It's an effective part of stress management in any scenario. You can learn more about meditation, whether you're into yoga or any other form, and use that for harnessing your nervous energy. Now, I said that the second level of overcoming fear and harnessing nerves is on the physical level. Let's talk about that now. The physical level is part of your fight or flight defense mechanism. And so we need to get to know our own bodies. Because as we know, when we are nervous, our hearts beat faster and we start to breathe shallowly and our muscles become tense. So we're now going to do a little bit of breathing exercises to see how this might actually help us for overcoming nervousness in public speaking. Find a place where you can sit and sit up straight with one hand on your abdomen and the other one on your chest. Now take a deep breath. Your abdomen should rise, not your chest. So if you're breathing like this, not only is that a nervous way to breathe and a shallow way, but it even looks nervous. Look at this again. I look nervous when I breathe that way, and it doesn't help me. But if I breathe through my abdomen, with singers we call this breathing through the belly button, then it actually helps to calm the nerves. So breathe in deeply again through the abdomen. And again. Now you see, it doesn't even look as nervous when you can breathe that way. You can do this counting up to 4. You breathe in to the count of 4, and then hold it for the count of 4, and breathe out for the count of 4. I do this exercise with children sometimes. We call it blowing up the tummy balloon. And if you like to, you can do this lying down on the floor. You can really get the idea of your tummy balloon going in and out. But sitting in the chair will be fine. So here we go. Breathing in for the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. And out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And rest. Now we can do that same exercise, each time increasing it. We can do it breathing in for the count of 6, for the count of 8, etc. This is a very important thing I have noticed when I've observed other beginning public speakers. They breathe in, usually quite shallowly, and they forget to breathe out. And they breathe in again, and they forget to breathe out, and they breathe in again, and they don't breathe out. And I think to myself, if only they would just breathe out, they would feel a lot more relaxed. Isn't that something we all do? When you want to relax, you go, and you actually breathe in through here, and you let all the air go out, and it is a way to relax. So if there's nothing else you remember about overcoming nerves, just remember this. when you're in front of a group of people, pause and just take the time every now and then to breathe out. And you will find that very greatly helps you to settle those nerves and overcome the negative energy that you don't want. Muscle relaxing exercises. And this is another thing we can do that help our bodies that are getting all nervous and in the way of the presentation we want to make. This is what we call progressive relaxation. Again, sitting in your chair or lying on the floor if you wish, tense all your muscles. Your face, your hands, your fists, you curl up your toes, everything tense. And then relax all of them. And think of each one. Are your eyebrows relaxed? Are your fingertips relaxed? You can work from one end of your body right through to the other, top to bottom or from your toes up. Relax your toes. Relax your ankles, your calf muscles, your knees. Relax your thigh and your buttock muscles. Is your abdomen relaxed? Now your chest and your shoulders. Work from your fingertips and the palms of your hands, up through your elbows, back up to your shoulders, and now relax your neck and all your face muscles. This is something very helpful to relax yourself if you know you're going to have to get up and give any kind of a performance. Head rolls is another thing. Gently, very gently, drop your head down towards your chest, but only as far as you would say yes. Don't try to strain and put your chin on your chest. Now back up again. Just looking a little bit above you and up, but not right up at the sky or the ceiling above you. And down and up. So little nods if you like. Alright? Now, turn your head sideways. This you can do quite safely as far as it will go. And now back to the middle. And turn your head the other way. And back to the middle. What I would never ask you to do is to turn your head around on your neck, because you can end up with a bit of a problem with discs slipped and all sorts of other things that we don't want. We can also help with our shoulders. Shoulder lifts. Left shoulder up and down. Right shoulder up and down. And together and down. And then roll your shoulders to the front and behind, to the front, just making circles with your shoulders while you're still standing up tall, and finish by parking your shoulder blades on the shelf behind you, or if you like, imagine putting your shoulder blades into your back pockets. Now this is the sort of posture you want with public speaking, sort of as if you're a puppet on a string. And again, it's the same technique that singers used. In order to speak well, in order to breathe well, and to breathe from the belly, as we say, or the abdomen, we need to stand properly. You can't give us public speaking talk standing with a slouch like this, on one leg, or leaning against a piece of furniture. In order to speak effectively and to come across confidently, and coming across confidently will build your own confidence, it is necessary to stand what I might call tall and proud in order to give your presentation. The third level of fear and nervousness is the emotional level. We need to prepare ourselves practically on an emotional level. While you're relaxed, identify any negative thoughts that are there and acknowledge or recognise what they are. And then, if you have these negative thoughts, replace them with positive ones. For example, if you're thinking, everyone will think I'm stupid, then say, I know a lot about this topic. Now, of course, that does put the onus on you, You do need to have researched your topic, and you do need to know a lot about your topic first. But if you've done the work, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to tell yourself, I know a lot about this topic. I can tell my audience all about it. Also, give yourself time to prepare and practice, building on the skills that you have learned in public speaking. And this means schedule them into your diary. If I know I have to give a speech, I plan ahead and make sure that I have time to practice that speech. I can't just get up in front of a group of people and expect to give a well-polished, confident speech if I've never ever spoken it before, if I can't visualize myself getting it right because I don't know what the content is in the first place. So, give yourself time to practice getting it right, and then when you're in front of the audience, you will be able to remember how it felt when you got it right. And know that your audience wants to listen to you. They want you to get it right. They're on your side. They're up there with you. So emotionally, hang on to that positive thought. Now we've spoken about 2 of our myths. I'd like to go on to the 3rd myth now. And you might remember that was, I'll forget the speech. What if I make a mistake? Well, I'll tell you what. If you make a mistake and you don't tell us that there was a mistake, we're not clairvoyant. We, your audience, will never know that you made a mistake. The words that are spoken at the spur of the moment that come to your head during your speech are often the best ones. Why? Because they're filled with your passion, and they're often better than the words that you've planned to say. Just remember that those people who are afraid of making a mistake, they usually don't make anything. Don't be afraid of making a mistake. Go in there and have a go. Now, do remember though, that practice doesn't mean memorization. Remember Churchill? He made a mistake only because he tried to memorize the whole speech. In this course, the parts of your speech that I'm going to ask you to memorize are only the beginning and the end. Everything else in the middle, you either memorize what the main points are that you want to make, or you might just have those main points on a paper in front of you, nice and big so that you can see it clearly, to remind you about what the next thing was that you were going to speak about. And then, in your own words, tell your audience what it was that you wanted to tell them about that point. Just as you would if you were speaking to a group of friends sitting around the dinner table. So, as I said, to build your confidence, memorize the opening and the closing phrases of your presentation. Once you start to speak, your confidence will rise if you've done that. And then if you find that you're running out of time, you can quickly cut to the closing part of your presentation, which you've memorized, and nobody would be knowing that there's anything that you've left out. And your speech will still close on a strong remark. The 4th myth was the idea, I will make a fool of myself. Now this is all about skills training. If you choose a topic that interests and excites you, you will not make a fool of yourself. If you choose a topic that you already know something about, and then because you're so interested, you go and research and find out a bit more about it, that will give you confidence when you get up to talk in front of your audience. If you consider first whether or not you want to use visual aids, this will make an impact on whether you make a fool of yourself or not. And if you are going to use visual aids, practice with those visual aids when you get up to practice your speech before the real thing. We will be talking more about visual aids later. Consider also the use of gesturing and planned movement. We have already mentioned before that some of those lecturers that were boring and difficult to listen to had movements that they kept on repeating. You know those lecturers that rub their necks, or the men with the beards that keep rubbing their beards? All of those, there's lots of other things which we'll talk about later on. Work with your audience so that the energy that is the nerves that you have, you channel into something that you're going to do with your body, something you've planned to do in a constructive way. And then, when you practice with those movements as part of your speech. But for the rest, just stand still. No need to move. The other thing about this is to think about your audience, not yourself. And then expect your audience to be attentive and supportive, because they probably will be. Act confidently, even if you're not feeling confident. This is an amazing trick. If you feel nervous, don't let anybody know. Use the body language, stand upright, use the space that's allocated to you, and look confident. And you will be amazed. If you appear confident in front of an audience, the audience will expect that you are confident because that's what you look like. You will then get the right kind of feedback from your audience, and that will then give you more confidence to build on top of the confidence you've already given yourself, simply by using confident body language. Don't make things worse by apologising if you get something wrong. It doesn't matter. If you make a mistake, let it be. Just go on with the next bit. Apologising is only annoying to any audience. I'm sure you would have experienced that as an audience yourself. Now, what if your mind does go blank? Well, you can just repeat the last thing you said, and sometimes that might just add impact to the speech, and then go on. But really, it shouldn't be a problem for you if you only memorised 3 main points or so that you wanted to talk about, and then you just speak ad lib, or if, as I've said before, you've got your notes with the main points that you want to make there in front of you, there's very little to memorise other than the opening and the closing of your speech. When you get to your conclusion of your speech, pause, summarise what you've just told them, and then give your concluding remarks to your audience with some sort of emphasis and real eye contact to the audience that you're speaking to. Controlling anxiety and nervous energy takes time, and with practice you can do this too. But remember, the audience wants to see you succeed. They want to help the nervous speaker too. I have seen the most nervous students, after coming through this course and using the methods just given to you, rise and become prize-winning presenters at conferences and seminars. And guess what? You could be one of them.